fair dues. I don't have to come up with something foolproof if they don't. My plan is absolutely no more bitty and incomplete and untested than theirs. The only thing we do know is theirs doesn't work. Over and over again, it doesn't work. So I just reject out of hand the notion that because I can't come up with a genius plan, seamless and perfect, that means I'm a cretin. No.
I didn't say you were.
No, I know.
You accused everybody else of it.
He was talking about the politicians. Right, I tell you what, let's let David finish the talk, and then we'll have a question and answer.
Okay, I'm nearly there, really, because you go on, that's the problem. I simply wanted to make it clear that this notion that the debt that we're bailing out is because we all took on loans that we couldn't afford. That I heard in Ireland till I wanted to be sick. Has anyone tried to take a loan from a bank? Have you ever walked into a bank saying, I want a loan? No one's ever taken a loan from a bank. The last person who took something from a bank was Al Capone. You go into a bank and you ask, and you are offered a loan. And the best thing you can do is accept or not accept. You're offered a loan by an expert who says, trust me, I'm a banker, I know what I'm doing, you can afford it. The moral guilt is on all parties. But if we accepted loans we couldn't take, it's because they were offered to us by very smart people who said, trust me, I know about these things. So where does the moral guilt really lie? Where does the bulk of it lie? Right? We didn't take on loans that we couldn't afford. There was one group who took on loans they couldn't afford, the banks. They all took on loans from each other, and in 2009, not one of them could pay. There wasn't a single global bank that could pay. They did take on loans that they knew, as highly paid experts, they couldn't pay back. They did that. Once again, what they did, they accuse everyone else of having done. No, they did. And nation spending wasn't out of control. I offer these figures not to bore you, but because it gets around the quite reasonable objections when people say, hang on, how do we know? You're just making this up. And I agree. I'm just a bloke from Scarborough. You shouldn't believe me. This is why I bore you with facts and figures. This is Price Waterhouse Coopers, okay, one of the big four. You don't get any more in the pockets of the banks than these people. These are the people who helped sign off on all the banks saying they were all healthy in 2008. Okay? And what they said is UK government debt was relatively low and stable as a share of GDP from 1987 to 2007. That's them, not me. After 2007, government debt, whew. Now, I don't remember nurses and teachers suddenly getting vast pay raises in 2007, do you? No. If I remember rightly, what suddenly we did take on debt for was bailing out the banks. And when we bail out the banks, we're not bailing out the banks. We're bailing out the people who own the wealth in those banks. We're not just bailing out some sort of entity. We're bailing out people and people's wealth. And those people are the top 5%. It's their wealth that we're bailing out when we say we're bailing out the banks. It's their wealth we're protecting by protecting those institutions. We're not protecting the institution, we're protecting the people who own the institution. The institution could continue on with the same places, the same people working in it, doing the same job. The only thing that would be different is the people who currently own it would be bankrupt. And they'd be going to the council saying, I'm sorry, you need to rehouse my family. Sound a bit harsh? They're perfectly happy for you to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so, yes. So 1, 2, any more?
I hope there are lots of questions. Please don't take anything I've said on faith. This gentleman was quite right. Yeah.
I've got a couple, if that's all right.
As long as they're easy.
I'm very interested in quantitative easing because there was a lot of discussion about how it wasn't actually on a balance sheet of any description and it seemed to be kind of under the radar, so I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think as you were talking about the programme Bank of Dave by the Burnley chap who was trying to set up his own bank and faced a huge amount of opposition in terms of regulation. My understanding, although I haven't got the detail, is that the Green Party are very much trying to roll back this system that we currently have And I wonder whether they want to see more little banks like that, with clean banking records, as you say,
Yes.
trying to lend to people and be a bit more forthcoming with finance.
Frankie, that's a lot of questions. Okay. Quantitative easing. It's the kind of the halfway house between printing up £5 notes. They are increasing the money supply, but what they're saying is, you'll hear this term sterilising. In other words, what they're doing is they're saying, well, we are printing up new money, and we're printing up government debt, letting the banks buy it in return for collateral. Right? And you might think, well, we give them one bit of paper, they give us another. Yes, except the bits of paper they give us are considered less good. People are less happy with them. In other words, they give you one of these that says, I promise to pay, and it's signed by Billy Bob Thornton in Barstow. This one's signed by the Fed. Which one would you rather have in your pocket? So that's one of the reasons they do it. They'll also, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but more often than not, central banks will accept as collateral bits of paper for more than they really ought to. And therefore they sneak extra money in. Once that money is in, the banks then start leveraging it. So they increase the money supply. So you can argue both ways. Are they actually increasing the money supply? Are they actually really printing, or are they not? And it gets lost in the details. But it is a form of the government essentially pumping in money that has that guarantee on it to go and fit into the places vacated by the value that used to be on this bit of paper. So this used to be worth 100 cents on the dollar, is now worth 30. The person whose personal wealth is that 100 cents, Mr. Billionaire, is at 70 pence, isn't he? If the bank can parlay this to the central bank and you get a crisp tenner, £5 note, then that 70% has come back. That's why the banks aren't marking down this stuff if they don't have to. And they're using every trick in the book. And we're allowing them to. The laws allow them to. And so a lot of the money has simply gone in to replace that wealth. And on the news, it's talked about, well, we're making the banks sovereign. Yes, we're making the people whose wealth is tied up in the banks sovereign. And in America particularly, but also here, who are some of the people in the 5%? They're cabinet ministers. They're not you, they're not me. They're bailing them out. And then they'll say, oh, we've got to have austerity to pay for all of this.
And we're all in it together.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Can I just reassess what that means basically?
It's a security made of mortgages. So basically, it's the promise that's on it is when someone signs a mortgage saying, I promise to pay this back.
And because it was bad debt, then the mortgages were in there, so 70% of those mortgages were actually cracked. So
Yeah.
you look at 30% of
Yeah.
those mortgages getting paid back, so you look at 30%. Okay, so I'm a billionaire,
Yeah.
and that's one of my pieces of paper.
Yeah, you're out a lot of money unless I bail you out.
How did I get that piece of paper anyway? Like, I'm being really thick again.
No. Look,
Well,
let's...
so if I'm earning, right, and I've got a really good job.
No, we're not talking about that kind of person. We're talking about a person in the city.
No, I know, but in my little naive head, money is earned and goes in the bank and accumulates.
Yes, okay. Good luck with that.
I'm trying.
Yeah, no.
So I'm accumulating my wealth.
Yeah.
Okay. How?
Can I jump in and try and answer?
Yeah, because my brain is.
Okay, well, and so it should, because...
Like, how did I become a billionaire with lots of pieces of paper?
Okay,
I'm not a billionaire
well,
with lots of £5 notes.
fine. And by not having £5 notes that you became a billionaire. You could have accumulated this and say you got £1 million, all in £20 notes which you saved from your weekly brown paper packet which you got from working in Tesco's, right? And you put it all in there and there's £1 million in there now, okay? It's tied up in this, okay? And the bank will pay a few percent on it, all right? And if that's how you are, you're an honest working Joe and you're never going to get very much money. However, what you do is you go down to the city and you say to someone, I've got £1 million I'd like to invest, right? I'll withdraw my £1 million to the bank and I'll invest it in you. What can you give me? And they say, well, we've got some securities here and these securities pay twice the interest rate on your checking account, on your deposit account. Twice. Give us £1 million, we'll buy you £1 million worth of this stuff.
So it's just Wall Street on there,
Yes, I mean that's what caused the first crash. It was the overexpansion of credit. I mean, this gentleman is right that what I'm saying is I'm saying look at this. There's something not right here. I'm saying look at that. There's something not right here. I'm not clever enough to be able to say, and this links perfectly to that via this mechanism. All I can say is these things are all true. Collectively, they all went kablooey in 2009. You either have to believe that's an amazing coincidence that all those things happen to go wrong at the same time, or the reason they went down at the same time is because they are connected. Now, I may not be able to spell it out in exactly the right way. If I could, I'd either be working for Goldman Sachs or I'd had a mysterious car accident somewhere in the Alps. So I agree with you, I'm right. But it's just the defence that I make is that I don't have to have the perfect answer to critique the present system. And that's the way it is. I'm not saying you definitely shouldn't reject their certainties and sign up to mine. Certainties are what's got us in this problem. Don't accept mine as a replacement for their certainties. Absolutely not. There are way too many certainties and way too many people who'd like you to have their certainties. I don't. I simply want to say to you, their certainties are patently wrong and you need to ask a lot of questions. I've got what I've tried to work out for me, and it makes a certain amount of sense, certainly more sense than I'm getting from the newspapers. And the bankers that I speak to, very senior bankers, they think it makes sense too. But it's not the whole answer. Absolutely not. All you have to do is not accept the certainties peddled by the newspapers and by Newsnight and by the central bankers. They are absolutely lying to you.
Is it the problem? I mean, we might look naive world again. I'm sorry, if it doesn't exist, if it's not real, it doesn't exist. So why? It's the same with hedge funds. How can you, not you personally, how can we enable or sanction the existence of something that doesn't exist?
You don't
By
stop
accepting
them.
it.
You don't stop them. Yes, exactly. You accept them. Yeah. It's the essence of it is debt. That's why I said if money used to be power, debt is power now. But it's augmented because it comes with interest. Right?
It used to be that the only debt was your mortgage. That was the only debt that you could really.
Yeah, except your mortgage was sold on and
this is credit as opposed to money.
That's what I mean. So the problem seems to stem from when we started.
money mutated. That's where I started, saying it mutated, and it did.
When credit became a commodity.
Yeah.
And now risk is a commodity.
And we have a hedge fund.
Sorry, can I just let that lady speak for ask her question first? Thank you.
First thing I wanted to say was I think that for lots of people it's been a hugely successful thing because the rich don't seem to have got any poorer. So you might say they've done very well and they have succeeded in what they wanted to do. Yeah.
You could, yes.
They're all rich and we're not rich and
Yes.
they're not going to stop being rich unless we have a revolution.
No.
And the second thing that's, I mean, I've always thought of money as a form of indirect barter. Because obviously, if you go and work in a school or something, they can't pay you what you need, so they give you tokens. Has the debtor's money sort of divorced currency from indirect barter?
Yes, I would say it has. I mean, funnily enough, I would say the very last place that barter existed was in old-fashioned banking. Because what you would do when you went to get a mortgage is you would barter your property as collateral and your promise to pay them money from your hard work for money. You got money. What they got was a claim on your house and a claim on your income. That is as close to barter as still existed in the modern world. When securitization came along, it got rid of that. And it got rid of this thing which had hamstrung banking. Because the rest of the world was in finance. Banking was in barter. They would hand out money and they didn't get back something they could spend. They didn't get back any form of money, did they? But now with securitization, they do. So the business about barter, I think, is a very clever question, and it's right. It did change the nature of money, and it changed the nature of debt, and it changed the relationship between the two in a tremendously important way. And one of the things which bothers me the most is this thing which altered the world profoundly, no one talked about. Was it on Horizon, the British documentary strand? Was it on Panorama? Was it on Newsnight? Did anyone teach you in school or in university? There is a conspiracy of silence. And I did one other quote I'd just like to read you, because I think it's kind of important. And it's another one from our friends, the Rothschilds. The few who understand the system will either be so interested from its profits or so dependent on its favours that there will be no opposition from that class. They were very clever, very perspicacious. And there wasn't. The people who knew what was happening didn't say a word until it all went wrong. And I do blame them. I think they are morally culpable. Not legally culpable, for the simple reason that they crafted the laws.
Joe and then Mike.
Joe?
I'll let Mike go first. Go on, Mike.
I just want to make it clear that I agree with everything he said about the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
They just sort of speak for themselves, don't they?
yeah. I think there's a different sort of honesty around though than you're giving credit for.
Mm-hmm.
The lady at the back said, you know, the Irish made a mess of doing it, like the Russians and the Chinese have made a mess of communism. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Everything
it.
that's good, everything we believe in is easy to make a mess of.
Yeah.
And there are genuinely good people trying to protect ordinary people who don't know what the consequences of some of this stuff might be.
Yes.
That's why I really think we should. I think we're living in a society where we point too many fingers at other people and tell us they're idiots rather than helping them to come up with a solution. Because this is a tremendously difficult problem. We're all here because this is a tremendously difficult problem.
Mm.
We're all here because we believe strongly that there are inequalities. We all believe that the banking system has got way out of control. Mm-hmm. We all, I think, broadly understand the things that we put on the table. Mm-hmm. That they become common currency.
Yes.
Forgive the expression.
Yeah, no.
Years. And I wish I was as smart as you
Don't try that.
in having a in having a certain way of not damaging the poor again.
Yeah.
In the way the organisations
Mm-hmm.
are rehabilitated.
And that's laudable. I mean, I hope more people take that view. I really do, because it is the right view. Surely it's the right view. Who could argue against that? I think where we disagree is, I get the sense that you feel I'm going overboard, pointing the finger at the financial class and the top 5%, saying they really did do something horrible and they really are.
Well, no, they clearly did. They were clearly culpable in a way that I've seen in the civil service over the last 5 or 6 years doing my job. That bankers moved from, if you were a banker 20 years ago, you had to understand banking.
Yes.
Now,
always helps.
Yeah, but we say that glibly and we laugh. But if you were running an engineering business 20 years ago, you had to understand engineering. There is an unfortunate class change. I don't mean classes in class. Sorry, unfortunate change of idea that you have to be a professional business person to run a business now. You don't have to understand the business you're running.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah. Now, and that is an enormous problem in society. So, I'm surrounded by politicians with what I do that don't understand the first thing about what they're doing because they've been to Oxford, they've been to Cambridge, they've studied PPE, they've greased some, they've been very nice to lots of people, and they've never had to do anything real.
Yeah.
So there's a basic problem of qualification in our society to make difficult decisions, and a crying need to make those decisions, and to give a voice to people who haven't got a voice.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know. I don't want to hear because we emotionally agree. I just want us to have a slightly more refined argument about how we do it and how we change those minds. Apologies, I'll shut up now.
I think not at all. No, honest. Mike, I don't think David's making. There's not this. I don't think it's a class warfare type thing.
Oh,
I think
I'm not saying that. We're looking for solutions, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think,
and we're not going to. I'm trying to learn a lot about what's been happening in Japan, and as I tried to in my lead-in was, you know, that Japan has survived its particular banking crisis. Because they were they are very egalitarian, okay, and they're also very good at exporting. Well, we've not got either of those things, and we know from the Resolution Foundation, for example, that by 2020, the bottom 50% are going to be maybe 15-20% lower living standards, and that was with growth. So you know, how are we going to get through this crisis? And I do agree with David. We have to have an understanding of where it started. Right. Okay. Sorry. Go on. Sorry. Okay, Joe. Do you want to ask your question now?
Yes, I do.
Right. Okay. So Joe, Morris. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I'm just going to do it like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You asked one before, and I know you. So sorry about that. Just remember your number, please.
Okay, I've got 2 questions.
okay.
I've got 2 questions because they're from 2 entirely different people. One's from me,
Yeah.
and I'll get that one second, and I think you'll be able to answer it pretty quick.
Okay, and they are?
Oh, and the other one, now let me get the other one in first, mate.
Yeah.
It's from A World to Win. Do you know who A World to Win are?
No.
Yes or no? Okay. Does anybody else?
Sorry.
Okay. What they are is a pretty left-wing intelligentsia people who are just starting to draw up and run a campaign on a new democratic constitution for Britain. They're
Right.
quite serious people. And one of them has asked me to ask you a serious question, but
Sure.
it's from them.
Okay, and it is?
I'll fire that and ask me.
Yeah, of course.
And I wrote it down. And what they said, it's a typical one where you put 2 or 3 questions into one.
Great.
Get it really quick, mate.
Okay.
He says, do you think capitalism can be reformed through Parliament?
Oh.
And if so, how?
Okay. I would say, I believe in democracy. I believe it's an essential thing. I've said from the beginning that however serious this financial crisis is, it pales into insignificance with the crisis in our democracy, because of the decisions that have been made since 1996, if not before, have been without democratic discussion. When they decided they must bail out the banks, we must do this, must do that, do you remember any discussion that happened in the newspapers, in Parliament? Was there any? No, there was none. By the government's own figures, we committed £1.4 trillion to the bailouts. That's their figures. That's a lot of money. Did anyone ask you?
No.
Was there any discussion? Did anyone say, look, let's have a discussion about what the nature of the crisis is? Is it liquidity crisis? They're just short of a bob or two. Or are they insolvent? Is it a solvency crisis? That was never discussed. We were just told, absolutely, it's a liquidity crisis. There's nothing wrong with the banks. They're not insolvent. They're just short of a tenner. We've got to lend them a tenner and it'll be fine. 2008, from the WikiLeaks, there's a cable from Mervyn King saying it's very hard when you look at the state of the British banks not to conclude they're insolvent. Thank you. Okay? That's not democracy. Do I believe in democracy? Absolutely. Do I think it can be reformed with the particular set of clowns we have in Parliament? No. Not because they're stupid. Obviously, some of them are educated way beyond their natural abilities. But the reason we're not going to get it through them is because I think Labour, Tories, and those people in the middle, who are they are, they're all essentially in agreement about this one thing. They're all agreed that this is the nature. It was just a liquidity crisis. And we've got to bail out things. There was no discussion. There's no. If you vote for one or vote for the other, they're still going to give you the same thing. It's like with Obama, a change. It's all about change. And yet the team he picked to deal with the crisis of his presidency were all the same people that were there before. What change? What change? There was no change. There was a change of skin colour. Obama was the first American president elected by racists. Very, very well-intentioned racists. Nice racists. People who would be horrified to be called racists. But they judged him by the colour of their skin. They say, he's black, he must be on the side of the poor. No, he's not. He's a rich boy.
So my real question is a completely different thing. Thank you very much.
That's made a lot of sense for me, I'm sure.
Thanks for that. It's one I'll have to report back on. But
great.
My real question is this one, mate. It's about what you're saying about the 90%, the 98, it's 97.4% of money, which isn't pieces of paper, it's all in bank accounts, all created through bank loans and through debt. Yes. Okay, now this is my question. If legislation was put into place to stop banks creating money out of fresh air, do you think that might make a very big difference?
Yes, it would. The question is, how would you do it? I think there are ways in which that could be done which would be absolute disaster. And other ways which it could be done.
If it was done,
it could be done.
Would it make a big
Banking is a social convention. The laws of finance, the laws of banking are not natural laws. They don't spring from the nature of electrons, protons and neutrons like gravity. You can't argue with gravity, it's a law of nature. Finance is nothing to do with that. Economics is not a science. It's largely a great steaming pile of piffle peddled by people who wouldn't be able to make it in any other department. It's rubbish. I mean, perfect information and perfectly clearing markets. I've never heard such utter drivel. So they're social conventions which can be changed. The question is, how do we change them? Can we change them in a way which will, like this gentleman says, not to damage the very people you're trying to help? Answer is yes, of course we can. You know, we put a man on the moon and brought him back, for Christ's sake. You don't think we could manage to sort out currency? Yes, we could. Could we do it with the present people in Parliament? No. I don't believe that this group of people, this group being the political class, I think what's happened is what's called intellectual capture, when everyone has become captured by the same idea. And it happens. You know, everyone on Easter Island thought the answer was, never mind the trees, let's build some huge heads and have them look out to sea. That was a genius idea. And they all agreed, evidently. And that only did them.
But my question, David, you've not answered it.
Probably not.
What you've talked about is, can we change the system?
Yeah.
Wasn't my question at all. My question was, if we stopped, and I don't mean the collective we is, but let's put it this way, if banks were stopped from creating money, that banks create money, all the money in circulation is created,
not all, but a lot,
97.4% is created by commercial bank loans. Okay, let's not argue about the figures. If we stop them doing that, if the banks could not create money and somebody else could say, government agencies, created the money that we needed for the economy to flourish,
yes, I do.
Would that make a big difference?
It would. I do think that the creation of money should be in the hands of government. I don't believe it should be in the hands of banks. However, you then plunge into what I believe is the central ideological battle of our time, and that is who should be able to create the money supply, who is best able to determine where it should go. Now, the philosophical idea of modern monetary theory would say central government should do it. They will determine how much money should be printed up to enable the idle capacity to be used and people to be put to work. As a theory, it's impeccable. Just like free market capitalism is impeccable as a theory, just like Marxism is impeccable as a theory. As a theory. The question is, who decides what's unused potential? I mean, when our shipyards closed, I'm from the time, when they closed, you could say, well, look, North Shields is stuffed with shipbuilders who are now taken to alcohol and their children are taken to heroin. That is what happened. That's unused capacity. We should print up some pounds and get them back to work, build ships. It works as a theory, as long as you pretend South Korea doesn't exist. There is no simple answer. I don't believe governments will be able to perfectly decide how much money we need and where it should be put to achieve growth. Markets are actually quite useful. Not because people in the market are geniuses, but because there's more people making mistakes different from each other, instead of one government department making one colossal mistake. I don't believe central planning is perfect. I don't believe the markets on its own is perfect. What I do think is that markets are there to serve us, not the other way round, which is the way it's gone. I do think both mechanisms have a place and can do useful things, but I want a democratic control.
Exactly.
Not control of an unelected boardroom over whom I have no control at all. That is not democracy.
You need to put in, David. But again, and I'll shut up now because other people obviously want
Yeah,
to
there's
ask
people back
questions.
there going to lynch you.
I was just going to add something to what David was saying there,
But it's
hopefully
that
to answer your question.
If you stop banks, if we stop banks from creating the money supply and somebody did it better, let's leave that alone if that somebody might be. Would that make a big difference?
It would make a huge difference. It would make a huge difference. It's not perfect because you have the problem of, well, who is going to and what are their motives, but I think it would be better. Those who talk about statism, the libertarians in America, will always say that will be a disaster because what you get is an inner group of powerful people in the government who then print up money and allocate funds for them and their friends, and it just becomes an insider and everyone on the other side gets screwed. That does happen. Obviously it happens. We know it's happened. I could point to things from the Labour Party back in Edward Heath's day where that happened. I could name names, but I'm not going to. I'm in trouble already. But exactly. But what do we have with the free market? We have a small unelected group of men who run the world's top 20 banks who are making those decisions. It's the same thing. We have an inside group either way. No one is a panacea. We know what the problem is, and it's bringing democratic control back to us. It's not, it should be central government decides, or it should be the market that decides. We know what the problem is.
Yeah, obviously.
And I would think step one would be to A, regulate the banks, B, stop them having control over the money.